All right, just a quick one because I'm busy writing like a demon. And so I'm getting emails and some questions about, people asking me specifics about how to interpret the Bible or Catholicism, or, is this sacrament valid, and should I even, one of the questions was some guy asked in a comment, what's your view of should I be able to visit a couple who's married, out of the faith, so like one Catholic married with a non-Catholic or whatever. It's, on one side, thanks, I appreciate the fact that you put so much faith in my opinion is nice. But ultimately I'm just a human being like you, and I've got my flaws and whatever. So it's good, it's okay for you to ask, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you're getting down to such specific details of your life, of personal situations in your makeup, you've got to figure out this stuff by yourself. Ultimately, when you're going to be judged on the at the end of days, in the end of the judgment day, call it, you're going to be held responsible for you. It's your decision. It's whether you thought it was right or wrong. It's what you did in your best view. That's not to say, we're not Protestants. There are rules. And yes, those rules are there for a reason. And if you're interested in the details of those rules, then it's on you to understand those rules. It's on you to get the Code of Canon Law. It's on you to get the Catechism of Trent. It's on you to get the Bible and read them and understand them and know what's going on. It's on you to do that. Now, why do I always rail against binary thinkers? Because it's a very binary way of thinking to assume that there is some hard, completely black and white rule about whether you can visit somebody who's married out of the faith and visit with them or not. It's kind of absurd, really, for you to think that way. God doesn't operate that way. Only really kind of autistic human beings operate that way. Now, how do we know this? Again, because read your Bible. Now, read the Code of Canon Law. Understand the Code of Canon Law. Now, if you can't do all of this stuff, which, to be fair, probably over 90% of human beings cannot, all right? They just don't have the ability, they don't have the education, they don't have the understanding, they don't have the ability to do logic, they don't have the ability to understand a legal document, even when it's very simply written. They don't necessarily have the concept, the ability to understand that concept and take it forward while respecting the logic behind the concept. So why do we have these rules then? Exactly for those people. 90% plus of the human race. And I think I'm being generous when I say 90%, because it's probably more like 98%. I remember many years ago watching a program when I wrote the Face on Mars. I was interviewed on American television by this guy, and just before I got on, there was another guy talking about taxes and how you shouldn't pay your income tax because it was a fraud by the government and you could avoid paying it altogether. And he made a comment saying, look, 85% of people don't even have the ability to understand what I'm talking about. And I remember the guys behind the scene while I was waiting to go on, they were saying, oh, he's pretty arrogant, thinking about 85% of people can't understand that. And at the time I thought, I remember thinking, oh, I wonder if that number's right or not. Now, 25 years later, I'm thinking, that guy was very generous. So the older I get, the more I realize not only that most people are idiots, but most people are complete idiots. And that's just a sad fact of reality, But what about those 90% plus of idiots? They count too. They're human beings. We're supposed to look after them, take care of them somehow. I'm not particularly good at that. I don't care for them at all. I'm interested in the 2% that actually have a functioning brain. But that's why the rules are there. If you can't be bothered to figure all the stuff out, find a good solid priest and follow them. And the people that are asking me, oh, where can I find a good solid priest? I've put the link up many times. ecclesialuxvera.org, something like that, and it gives you a list of all the churches that do not consider Vatican II as in any way legitimate around the world. There's not that many of them. You might not be able to get a priest right away. You might have to email them, whatever, figure it out. All right. If these things are important enough that you're going to email me about whether you can visit or not with somebody who's married out of the faith, you should be able to use your search engine to find out where there are churches that are not Vatican II, that are not Novus Ordo. Okay, and then ask them. And it's perfectly fine if you want to take the advice of a priest. It's even perfectly fine if you want to take my advice, but it's still on you. Whatever advice you choose to go with, ultimately it's your decision. You need to understand that. Now, why do I say, there isn't necessarily a black and white rule? Well, Romans 14:14, one of my favorite passages of the Bible, which I still don't remember off the top of my head exactly how it goes, but it's something like, nothing is necessarily illegitimate or wrong unless you think it is. So how could that be? How could one action for you be totally wrong and another action for me be okay? Is God unfair? Does he say, he slept with a prostitute and he's going to hell, but that guy slept with 3 prostitutes and he's coming up to heaven? Is it? Does it work that way? Well, kind of yes, because it's like martial arts in a sense. I know I relate everything to martial arts and that sort of thing because it's something that I've done all my life. And, in Gorin no Sho, Miyamoto Musashi's book of 5 rings, it explains that once a man becomes sort of really good at one thing, it doesn't matter what it is. If he's a painter, he's going to start to see everything through the eyes of a painter. If he's a strategist, he's going to see through the eyes of a strategist. If he's a warrior, he's going to see through the art of what he calls the art of war. He says strategy was one of the 10 holy things. And it is, because it's not just about killing people. It's not just about war. It's about being able to move in the world. And I do see things through that lens. And so how is it that God has got different rules for everybody? Because that's the only way to be absolutely fair. Proper justice is not like, you punched somebody in the mouth, so you go to jail. You punched somebody in the mouth, so you go to jail. You punched somebody in the mouth, so you go to jail. No. That's the box ticking of the Anglo-Saxons. It's the box ticking of the Protestants. And it is demonic. Human beings are not boxes that you file away in a little cupboard in a neat, nice order. They're messy, they're unique, and they all have their own way of doing things. And to be absolutely fair, you need to understand their intent. So, why did you punch him in the face? Because you're a thug and you wanted to mug them and she's a little old lady. You go to jail at hard labor for a long time. Why did you punch him in the face? Because that guy's a pedophile and he was reaching out for my kid. You get a medal and you get to punch him again and again and again as a reward. Each one has got his own thing. So when in Romans 14:14, I think it's talking about, more specifically, it might be talking about food or eating this or that thing that is okay for somebody, not okay for somebody. But I interpret that also in a wider context. And again, you can say I'm wrong and it only applies to whether you're a vegan or not. But even if it's just to that, right? So if a guy's a vegan and he believes that he's sinning if he eats, fish on or if he eats beef on a Friday instead of fish or whatever, and that's what he truly believes, and he thinks he's going to go to hell if he doesn't do that, well, leave him alone. If that's his belief and it's going to cause him so much hassle in his own life. Personally, sometimes I don't even know what day of the week it is, especially now in the apocalypse, and I might eat whatever on a random Friday. Do I believe I'm going to hell for that? No. Why? Because there's no intention behind it. There is no intention of being disrespectful. Now you can say, oh, well, he's a barbaric fool and that he doesn't know any better. Right. So what does God do with a barbaric fool who doesn't know any better? If a guy comes into my house, that's been into my house 15 times, right? And he comes in with muddy shoes and he just traipses it in, he's probably going to get a smack in the face. because he's been there 15 times and he knows you don't do that in my house. But if I've just met, if some guy comes at the door and he's like, whatever, it's in the apocalypse, he comes to my door and he's like, man, I've just, I've fought off the hordes, and I kind of need a glass of water, and I kind of would be good to hide, and I know of his exploits, or I've just met him, whatever. I know he's a barbarian, a shoeless guy who's just hacked 15 pedophiles that were trying to gather together on Bohemian Grove, and he's covered in mud, blood, and spit, and he's like, can I? And he just runs in and he trails all his crap all over my carpet. I probably wouldn't even notice, because that's a good guy who's doing a thing, and yeah, he's completely screwed up my personal etiquette of like, don't bring your shit into my house. You take your shoes off at the door, and whatever, I'll give you slippers, and but there's a time and a place for everything, and you have to look at things in that context. Now, does that mean we're Protestants? No, it doesn't. There is a rule. The rule is, when you go and visit somebody's house, try and look, understand, even if it's the first time, offer to take your shoes off. And if you're a wild pig that's always got dirty feet and holes in your socks, that's on you. You're a wild, dirty pig that behaves like that. That's on you. It's your shame. Shouldn't be anybody else's discomfort. It's yours. So, again, I don't believe God is a box ticker. I absolutely do not believe that. I don't think there is any evidence of that in the Bible. I don't think there's any evidence of that in reality. There's no evidence of that anywhere that I'm aware of. So, you got to figure the stuff out for yourself. Now, why is there the rule? Yes, there is the rule. And is there a price to pay? I'm sure there is. Because if I'm saying, look, I don't think it matters that much whether I eat beef on a Friday or not, and I take that as my opinion, invariably my opinion is going to be wrong to some degree or other, because we all are to some degree or other. And perhaps I should have spent a bit more time to sort of think, hey, why am I doing this? What is the depth of this belief? Where does it come from? Is it worthwhile doing? And I haven't investigated that. And I'm saying out of my own cognition, like a Protestant, I'm saying, hey, whatever. If I get punished for that, fine, I'll take the punishment. But you see, I am saying that in my head. I am making a choice. I'm aware that I'm choosing to not investigate it any further because I'm lazy, I don't have the time, whatever. Okay? So, it's a similar thing for you. If something bothers you enough, then get off your ass and find out, right? There's very few things that bother me enough, but the principle of discovering what are the rules that come closest to what I experienced as being an aspect of God, absolutely hardcore Catholicism is absolutely it. I'm convinced of that. And I look at history, and history proves me correct and proves that to be the true case. So I don't really have an issue. Am I going to be following every little thing correctly? No, because I don't know that anybody truly can. And I've got kind of slightly a lot of stuff on my plate that I'm worrying about that I think is, in a general sense, more important. And again, I always go back to people like Jean Perizot de Valette or Bohemond, the Prince of Antioch. Those guys definitely colored a little bit outside of the lines. Bohemond bribed a gateskeeper to open the gate of Antioch so that he could take over the city. Is bribery always bad? Is it? If you're a crusader going into the Holy Lands and trying to get back Antioch, and you've got less men than everybody else, and you've been in a siege and your guys are starving, and is it bad? Is there a price to pay? I believe there is, because wrong is wrong. The rule is the rule. For example, I think, I'm speaking under correction because I'm no theologian and I'm no great reader of the Old Testament, but I believe that one of the reasons that David couldn't be, I think, a priest or whatever it was, is because he had spilt blood. So he had killed, and therefore he remains impure. That said, it is also said in the Bible that David is a man after God's own heart. So, intention matters. And like I've said before, a guy has punched me in the face and broken my nose and my lip, and it's like, that was a good punch. And another guy has tried to punch me, missed, it didn't even hit, didn't even cause any damage. At that guy, I'll beat the shit out of, because the intention matters. The guy who broke my nose, he's just fighting hard and he's going hard and he's like, hey, block, dude, it's not ballet, we're doing martial arts. The guy who tried to take my head off and missed, he's intentionally trying to hurt me because of his own ego or his own thing. We're not like, okay, we're two guys, we're going hard. If we get hurt, you get hurt. It's not that. It's like, I'm going to beat this guy up just to prove, that's different. There, your punishment is going to be harsher. So that's how I see it. That's how I interpret Romans 14:14. And I hope that also explains why binary thinking is absolutely wrong. I think it's video number 35. Go and try and figure out binary thinking versus paradoxical thinking. It's important. It's a very important thing. You need to learn to stop thinking like an Anglo-Saxon Protestant. You gotta start to think like a Catholic. Life is just more interesting, colorful, and entertaining than what the Anglo-Saxons think. That's why they're, a little bit repressed. That's why they have to get stone cold drunk every now and then just to let what's really deep down come out, and then it comes out all wrong because they're drunk. And if I've offended all the Teutonic races, well, you know how badly I feel about that sort of thing. Anyway, there you go. That was just a quick short one to try and tell you sort of the Kurgan approach to Bible reading. And, I'm one of those guys that I think, yes, you should definitely read your Bible and in the spaces in between when you're practicing swinging your two-handed sword and wearing your armor properly and seeing whether the elbow strike works better than the mailed fist, in between those spaces when you're taking a breather. You should definitely read your Bible and understand it and know your lines. And that's very important. Know your lines. I'm absolutely, clear about that. The samurai used to consider dying in a million ways so that when it happens, you're ready. This is the same thing. What are you going to do when if? What are you going to do when if? How do you react if that? If this, then what? If they come to your door like armed with injections to vaccinate you by force, how are you going to react? You're going to go down fighting? You're going to submit? You think it's good? You think it's bad? Plan for the things that you don't even imagine. That's how to be. And all of that comes round to the old saying at Delphi. Know yourself, which is the core principle that I've put in my Systema book. That is the core principle of which I've lived my life long before I started any martial arts, even when I was a little kid. It's very clear to me what is right, what is wrong, what is acceptable to me, what is not acceptable to me. I've always been very clear on that, and I think that comes from being a natural person, which in some cases can be quite brutal and savage, but it's also honest. I don't think it's wrong. I don't think it's bad. I think we're built that way. I think God made us a certain way, and if you stay close to your natural, instinctual, deep heart, and try and understand that all the twistings and all the lies and all the things that you've been exposed to can affect that, can change that, can influence that. So be careful. But your natural, deeply held, ultimate thing that's inside you, for which you're willing to die for which you're willing to fight for which you're willing to live for, that, I believe, is divinely inspired. Unless you're demon possessed like Hillary or Bill Clinton or Bill Gates, then you're demon possessed and you work for the other side, and then your instincts are probably to rape little kids and kill everybody. I don't know. I don't know how those people think or operate. I don't care to. And as far as I'm concerned, people who have that kind of life should all be strung up by the nearest lamppost. And I hope that soon we will have a much better, deeper, and larger inquisition that gets rid of all such people once and for all. That's my happy thought for today. Oh, and last point. No matter how bad it gets, you need to understand, okay? If I don't know the martyrs. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they live through their life, whatever. Maybe they just pray in desperation all day. I don't know. But if you have the warrior caste, there is no excuse for you being downhearted. You gotta be joyfully hopeful right up until the time when the enemy sword cleaves your skull. Alright? Be happily joyful and swinging, swing that blade. Just, you do you, man, Remember, like the 300, when the rain of arrows is coming and you're hiding under your shield, look to your neighbor and laugh. Because it's a good time. It's a good time to be alive. So, yeah, don't despair. Whatever shitty situation you're dealing with, we're all dealing with shitty situations. I mean, look, I haven't even fucking shaved. It's terrible, it's terrible. But go down fighting. I mean, if you want to belong to the warrior class, you got no excuse for a grim face. None. I don't care how bad it gets. You go down fighting, be a proper man. Go down fighting then. There you go. That's Bible inspiration Kurgan style. Have a good day.